Hello, I'm Richard Murphy, and I want to do a third in a mini-series that I've been creating on green quantitative easing and why that is better than QE, the conventional form that has been in use by the government since 2009 and which has created more than 400 billion of additional funds to basically finance the UK government deficit during the course of 2020. Green QE, I've explained, is something a bit different from conventional QE because it directs the use of the money that has been created as a consequence of the QE process. Instead of just leaving it to chance as to what the markets do with that new money that is created, which is what conventional QE has done and which has led to it being used basically for financial speculation and asset price increasing, such as house prices, share prices and so on. Green QE directs the money towards specific purposes, and that would include, for example, funding the Green New Deal, the green infrastructure that we need, the new types of re-equipment of housing, the new housing that we need, the transport changes and so on. But what I want to discuss in this video is why these two are both fundamentally rooted in the same type of theory and yet have different outcomes, and how they can be adapted to something which is meeting the need of society at present. Now, it's well known that I am an exponent of modern monetary theory. And what MMT, modern monetary theory, says is that we don't need the government to fund its deficit using bonds. And I entirely agree that in principle that is true. What MMT would also therefore say is that the government does not need to do QE because it can simply, in theory, run an overdraft between the Treasury and the Bank of England to create all the money it needs to fund a deficit. And again, in principle, I agree. But, and that is a really big and significant but, the practice is that everybody expects it to issue bonds. And bonds do, and I've explained this in another video, bonds do have a real function within the UK economy. They do underpin certain types of saving, pensions and so on, life assurance companies. They do underpin many of the operations that make the UK banking system secure by the operation of what's called the repo market, which makes overnight lending in the UK banking market safe for companies to participate in. And they do provide a way, for example, for foreign governments to hold sterling balances, which we would want them to do. So I'm not in favour of getting rid of government bonds, even though I fully understand that MMT says that it is possible. I also have a problem with running deficits for the sake of it if there is, as a consequence, and there would be, excess balances sitting on the central bank reserve accounts, which could still give rise to the possibility of there being financial speculation. That in itself is potentially risky, and because they could be leveraged, that is a possibility, although I accept the risk is much smaller in the case of MMT. And the reason why that is much smaller is because there are in effect three entries in the conventional QE world and even in the green QE world, which are reduced in the MMT world. Let me just explain that. When the government creates the money and injects it into the economy through running over deficit, which it does in the conventional world, the money goes from the Treasury, from the Bank of England on the Treasury's instruction, through the central bank reserve accounts, which are maintained with the operating banks within the UK economy, to whoever the recipient is. The government then reclaims that money either via tax or via the issue of bonds, and it comes back through the central bank reserve accounts to the Bank of England and on to either the Treasury or HM Revenue and Customs. And then through the QE process, the government re-injects the money once more into the financial system to buy back the bonds it has just issued. So effectively three transmissions. Now the argument is, in an MMT world, that the repurchase of the bonds does not have to take place because the bonds were never issued. the money was simply left out there in the first place. And I accept that there is a less distortionary principle in that. But given that there is no chance at present, and I think quite realistically in the current world architecture, there is very little or no chance of there being a cancellation of the idea of bond issues or the cancellation of QE programs, I am pragmatically putting forward a program which overcomes the problem which is created by conventional QE, which does not exist in MMT, but which can be solved by Green QE. And that problem is the excess money floating in the financial system as a consequence of the repurchase of bonds, which has to be put to better use. And my argument is that if that money was redirected to constructive use inside the green economy, by, for example, requiring that all ISA funds were invested in green investment bonds issued by the government, which would then, or by the government's National Investment Bank, the money would not pass back through the central bank reserve accounts, but would instead be applied in the real economy for constructive investment purposes. And again, if there was a change in the rules of pension investment to require pension funds to invest in green investment bonds issued by a national investment bank, which would in turn be used to then fund this green investment, which will create jobs, which will create opportunity, which will create sustainability, then we are beating the instability that is created within the financial system by QE. Now, is it perfect? No, I know it's not perfect. Could it work? Yes, it could work. What it does is effectively take the learning from MMT, which I do not dismiss for a minute, and apply it in a way which pragmatically is likely to give delivery at present. And for me, that is vital. I'm not a pure economist. I'm a political economist. What I do as a political economist is look at how the power relationships in society can be and are used to reallocate resources, usually against the benefit of most in society because they are captured by a tiny minority. Here I'm looking at how we can capture the process of QE and apply it to the benefit of people at large. Green QE does that. It changes the way in which QE operates for the benefit of us all. It applies it to fund the transition that we need. It directs that money through tax incentives and potentially through direct bond sales repurchased by the government, by the National Investment Bank, if it was absolutely necessary. But I don't know that that would be the case. But it guarantees that the money that would be available to fund the whole programme of the Green New Deal could be found because 70 billion a year goes into ISAs, over 100 billion goes into pensions. If 1/4 of that was redirected, we'd find 95 billion, and that is more than enough to fund a Green New Deal in the UK. This is the pragmatic solution to the problem that we face, which does not require the government to abandon QE, does not require us to move outside the world's norms of financial management at present, but which does achieve the result we want. I hope that's clear, but there is another one to come in this series, and that one is going to talk about how we popularise this whole idea to overcome the deficit narrative. Thanks for watching. If you're interested in what I've been saying in this video, please subscribe. There is a button below the viewing screen. If you're interested in what I have to say on Twitter, I'm at Richard J. Murphy on that medium. If you want to look at my blog, that's taxresearch.org.uk, and we have a Facebook page as well, Richard J. Murphy. So one of those things will get you more information on what this video series is about, and I hope I'll see you again soon.